I think in reality, the human rights ideology is about social engineering. There will be an opportunity for change. The question is, does the public really want it? We are living under a legal framework that absolutely doesn't respect free speech. I'm Allister Heath, and once again I'm responding to some of the excellent reader comments on my latest article bemoaning Britain's descent into anarcho-tyranny and its war against free speech. We begin this week with a question from Mary Gerard. An Irish citizen tweeting in America on a US platform is then arrested in London. What's it got to do with our police, and will they arrest the next foreigner who comes through Heathrow who also thinks boys are boys and girls are girls? Well, I'm not quite sure exactly where he was tweeting from, but the point is, it's the content of the tweet that worries me. I don't think those tweets were anything other than entirely innocuous. There was absolutely nothing wrong with them. I don't even think they were distasteful. But ultimately, they were a basic expression of free speech. If you cannot say that kind of thing, then there's nothing you can say. And we're increasingly living in a country where the police could knock on anybody's door at any time for any reason without actually telling them why, and effectively arresting them for something they've said just because some hypersensitive person has complained, and just because we are living under a legal framework that absolutely doesn't respect free speech anymore. And I think that is a complete disaster. I think that's much more important than exactly where that person was tweeting from. And of course, they are tweeting from a US platform, but I think that's less important than the fact that in Britain, the British government no longer even pretends to believe in free speech. The next question is from John Serrano Davey. Could possibly agree with most of this, but I'm not sure why ID cards are such a bad idea. Sure, they would need to be accompanied by suitable legislative protection, but subject to that, why not? They work well in many countries worldwide, so let's just make them safe and introduce them here. I think that the main argument for ID cards or digital ID cards in Britain are that they would help reduce illegal immigration. I don't believe that would be the case. I look at America and I look at France, which have forms of ID cards, and there's massive amounts of illegal immigration in both those countries. I think the ID card argument is just an excuse. The government has always wanted to introduce ID cards, and they think now is the time because of the illegal immigration crisis. But where are all these illegal immigrants coming from? They're coming from France, which has ID cards. The problem with ID cards, especially in the current context of massive police overreach and a dramatic crackdown on free speech, is that it would further shift the balance of power between citizen and state. At the moment, the state isn't able to force you to produce an ID card for no reason at any point. Under these new rules, they would. I think that's very dangerous, especially at a time when so many people are being harassed for what ought to be legal and protected speech. The next question is from Ian Biddle. This is what you get when you have government by civil rights lawyers. Paradoxically, they constrain the civil rights of the population. Well, yes, Ian, and I think that is a crucial, very, very important point. I think the human rights agenda is a con. I think our adoption of human rights as a secular religion has utterly failed. We've ended up less free than we were before all of these changes happened. I think in reality, the human rights ideology is about social engineering. It's about left-wing lawyers and a left-wing elite weaponizing so-called rights to deliver what they really think is important, to circumvent democratic accountability, for example, on things like immigration. It is not about defending traditional negative rights of the sort that were traditionally upheld in this country after Magna Carta, with the common law and all that kind of thing. So I think that is a big lesson of the past 28 years. We need to entirely undo the Blairite revolution, and I mean entirely. And it's not just about going back, we need to go forward. We need US-style laws to uphold free speech. We can't have a written constitution here, but we should legislate for the same outcome. We should have the same protections here as the Americans enjoy when it comes to speech. Mike Ree says, the clampdown on free speech is one of the great barriers to economic growth. If people start being wary of what they say and self-censor, they will not only suppress any opinions against woke ideology, but be wary of saying anything that challenges the status quo. Innovation and creativity will stop. Well, yes, I agree. Free speech, I think, is positively correlated with economic growth. I think it's quite hard to have a truly creative society, a truly innovative society, if you don't have free speech. Now, there's a caveat. If you are a poor country catching up with richer Western countries like China, for example, you can get away with quite a lot of repression as long as you still preserve a free-ish economy. But I think in the long run, and in countries, European countries, in America and so on, you need free speech. You need a free society if you want to unleash the creative juices of the entrepreneurial class. And therefore, the war on free speech will end up damaging the economy as well as making us into a much less nice and free society. Isn't it a shame, Allister, that we can endlessly write and talk about the catastrophe this government has brought upon the UK, but can do nothing to get them ousted? Well, we live in a democratic society, thank goodness, and every few years there are elections. I also believe that this government won't last until 2029, which is the latest time by which a general election needs to be called. I suspect they will collapse by 2027 because of the state of the economy, because of the looming financial crisis, because of the huge gap in the public finances and the fact that the bond market vigilantes are becoming increasingly nervous about the UK's economy. So I think there will be an opportunity for change. The question is, does the public really want it? And is the opposition sufficiently organised and not too divided to be able to bring that about? And there's a very big question, because you've got Reform versus the Tories, and they're both saying very similar things these days. And could that split the vote to such a degree that when it comes down to it, Labour end up staying in power, leading a far left or left-wing coalition that includes the Liberal Democrats, the SNP and so on. That is all we have time for this week. Thank you to all our subscribers for your comments. Keep them coming, and as always, we will try and respond to as many of you as possible.